Call it a do-over, call it a reset, call it what you want, but initially the EQS wasn't supposed to be the first EV from Mercedes-Benz in the United States. That was supposed to be a Mercedes SUV, but plans change and the new route brought us the EQS, the S-Class of EVs. Expected to land in dealerships this fall, the EQS merges the luxury of an S-Class with the tech of an EV. And to be sure, yes, the new S-Class is filled with tech, but Mercedes takes it to the next level with the EQS. Behind the wheel, the EQS drives like an S-Class. It's smooth, it's composed, it has the power there when you need it. In fact, it actually drives better than the S-Class because it doesn't have the vibration, doesn't have the sound of the motor. It's quiet and composed. And if you need that visceral feeling, there's the S-Class for you. But if you feel like you'd rather have something like EV torque, then, I mean, whee! There are two versions of the EQS coming to the United States. There is the rear-wheel drive 450 Plus and the all-wheel drive 584 Matic. I'm currently driving the 584 Matic. It's the more powerful version of the vehicle. It has all-wheel drive, it has more torque, and you can do things like this. Of the two variants, the rear-wheel drive 450 Plus has 329 horsepower and 419 pound-feet of torque, while the more powerful 584 Matic has 516 horsepower and 631 pound-feet of torque, and that is from two motors, one in the front and one in the back. Between charging sessions on the generous WLTP European test, the EQS has a range of 484 miles. And that is on the rear-wheel drive 450 Plus variant. Now, expect that number to come down dramatically once the EPA gets a hold of the EQS with its more stringent rules and more stringent testing. And we're guessing the range of the vehicle will be about 400 miles. Now, that'll be via a 107.8 kilowatt hour capacity battery. Of course, you still have to charge it. The EQS supports charging up to 200 kilowatts. It is a 400 volt system, so it's not gonna get, well, quicker when it comes to charging, unlike 800 volt systems that can do 250 and more, like say the Porsche Taycan. The automaker does say that when you plug it in with a 200 kilowatt charging station, it'll get about 185 and 174 miles in 15 minutes on the 450 Plus and 580 respectively. So it's still charging pretty fast. It's just not as quick as, say, the Taycan. As I said, Mercedes will be bringing two variants of the EQS to the United States. I've already driven the 580. I am now behind the wheel of the 450 Plus. It has less power, has a bit more range, and it's only rear-wheel drive. It's not an all-wheel drive vehicle like the 580, but you know, even with less power, you don't have as much immediate availability of that EV torque. It's still more than enough power for most people, I believe. I don't think we all need to have EV torque all the time, especially when you're talking about a luxury vehicle. If you're someone who absolutely adores power, the 580 is your car. If you're someone who just likes really nice luxury vehicles, the rear-wheel drive, a little less power, totally fine. I am not missing anything in this vehicle. In order to make sure that the EQS has a nice, smooth S-Class-esque ride, it's using an air suspension system that each individual tire has its own setup, and also each tire also has its own sensors that read the road as you're driving. So maybe a split second before you hit that bump, the vehicle knows that you're going to hit the bump with, say, the passenger front tire, and it adjusts the dampeners on that tire in order to reduce the jostling that'll happen inside the vehicle. It's actually pretty smart, and the result is a nice, comfy ride, even on this sort of bumpy mountain road. One fun little tidbit is that when the EQS was initially unveiled, US market would get two versions of rear wheel steering. You get the standard 4.5 degrees of rear wheel steering and the optional 10 degrees of rear wheel steering. Well, Mercedes has decided to scrap the 4.5 for the US market. All vehicles come standard with 10 degrees of rear wheel steering, and I will say it makes a great, huge, wonderful difference when you're driving through switchbacks or you're driving through a very small European city and you have to make a lot of turns on roads that are built for cars that are much smaller than this. And of course, if I were at Target, this would be awesome because I spend a lot of time in the Target parking lot, and I can tell you sometimes they're just not big enough for big cars. Overall, the driving experience of the EQS is outstanding. It's, dare I say it, better than the S-Class. We're talking about removal of the engine, so you're removing vibration, you're removing sound. This thing is almost eerily quiet. I haven't had the radio on all day.
Straight and continue to follow road 2.
That's the loudest noise in this vehicle, is the navigation. It's just, it almost startles you because it just sort of appears. In addition to all the technology that makes this vehicle a joy to drive, there's also the expected jump in technology with the infotainment system and the interior. Much has been said about the 56-inch hyperscreen. It's huge, it's gigantic, it's very large. Behind it are actually 3 displays, so it's a giant piece of glass with 3 displays behind it. There is the 12.3-inch dash cluster, there is the 17.7-inch OLED touchscreen, and then for the person sitting shotgun, there is the 12.3-inch passenger display where the passenger can control things like the media and with navigation. And overall, the displays are bright, they're easy to read, exactly what you would expect from Mercedes-Benz. Now, whether or not you want your passenger controlling your media and your navigation, well, that's between you and your passenger. And now I'm behind the wheel of the first edition, the 580 4MATIC first edition. Automakers have decided that whenever they release a brand new high value vehicle that they need a first edition, and people are buying them. Now, this is the vehicle that has that two-tone gray and black paint job that has been a little polarizing amongst the internet and my friends. For me, I actually prefer on this vehicle just one single color. The two-tone is fine, but it's just, I don't know. It doesn't work for me. Another issue is that the steering wheel actually obstructs the view of some of this 17.7-inch infotainment screen. It covers up about that much when you're driving. You can't see that much of the screen while you're behind the wheel. And Mercedes knows this, and what they've done is they've moved the widgets, the items that you actually have to see and touch and whatnot, over that much. So the widget for my navigation is moved over that much. The widget to show me what my next interchange will be, moved over that much. The widget that allows me to change the view of my navigation, again, moved over that much. So I can still see everything that I need to see. It's just an odd choice to make the screen so large that it's actually covered up a little bit. Mercedes-Benz says this is the next step in automotive design for them, and it has a lot of really cool features, including the DNA taillights, but it also has this fun line that starts from here and goes all the way down and then merges into this clamshell hood. They've also done away with the traditional grille because you don't really need that with an EV. Instead, on the grille, they have the Mercedes diamond pattern. It looks different from an S-Class, and well, it is different because it's an EV. This is a lot more blobbish, I suppose you can say. Smooth, let's say smooth. Blobbish seems garish. Let's say it's smoother than a lot of the Mercedes-Benz lineup. I'm sure people like it. I'm sure there are other people who will probably hate it. You might as well get used to it. It is part of the design language of the EQ lineup. Automakers are going EV, Mercedes-Benz is no different, and their EV lineup is going to sort of look like this. One thing that the EQS doesn't have that the S-Class does have is that 3D dash cluster. Now, the reason is technical. Because of the hyper screen that they have on here, the glass is actually concave. And so because of that, they can't use the technology behind the glass. It's sort of like an interlacing system in order to create a 3D illusion. You can't do the 3D illusion unless the glass is flat. And to make the glass flat, it sort of, I don't know, sort of changes and destroys the whole hyperscreen setup. The 3D display on the S-Class, I still feel it's a little bit gimmicky, so it's not really missing from here. I'm not disappointed that it's gone. This vehicle, it has the AR head-up display, so you have the flying arrows, and I will say that those arrows don't have that slight stutter that I found in the S-Class. I still think it was probably a pre-production version of the vehicle, so maybe that's why that was happening. But it's great when you're driving in an area where you have no idea where you're going. You're just following the navigation blindly. So those flying arrows, the AR navigation, it's outstanding. The EQS comes with 3 levels of battery recuperation, and those are controlled by, well, what used to be called the paddle shifters. I guess they're the paddle breakers, whatever. So you can set it to no recuperation, which essentially means I left my foot off the gas and we're just, well, rolling, smoothly rolling along. Or I can set it to normal recuperation, where you can sort of feel the motor slowing down the vehicle, or you can set it to increased recuperation. Now, it's not one pedal driving. You shouldn't expect to put it on increased recuperation and drive through town just using the accelerator. It doesn't even bring you really to a full stop. It brings you to mostly a full stop, but it does increase the amount of power you're sending back to the battery while you're driving, say, aggressively. Like the S-Class, it has biometric logins for your profiles. With the EQS, you can use your fingerprint, you can use your voice, or you can use facial recognition. Now, what's great about these profiles is after a few weeks of driving the vehicle, it learns your routine and it'll help surface things like directions or when you need to be on the phone for meetings. If you do a lot of meetings in the car, it'll say, hey, you have a meeting, usually on Wednesdays at, say, 9 a.m. Do you want me to turn down the music and get ready for that? And you can say, yes, Mercedes, yes, I do. The all-electric EQS will be available in US showrooms this fall. Now, pricing has not been announced yet, but it will be announced closer to its arrival in the United States. But it's a Mercedes, it's an electric, and it's an S-Class, so expect it to be pretty pricey. For more automotive coverage of luxury EVs next to giant mirrors, be sure to subscribe to Engadget.